Yeah. Oh, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, oh, I do believe we shall overcome someday. What's up? It's your boy JFK. We're in the building. If you're here, let me know you're here. I see my people falling in. Let me know you're here, man. I'm sorry I didn't put out the flyer or anything like that. Been really busy, but it's just a topic that I just had to say something about what's going on, and I know everybody already understands what I'm about to talk about because I did a rant on FB Live yesterday, and the reason is I find myself almost withdrawing. I don't know about you. Hey, if you're here, you're welcome. Please drop me a line. There's a conversation. I'm doing this one today because I find myself almost withdrawing, right? You hear of another shooting, you hear of another injustice, and there's a tendency to start to like say, well, it's too much. We can't do anything about it, so let's pull back. But I'm fighting that urge. I'm resisting that temptation. I'm resisting that temptation. What's going on is it's almost like it's forcing you to not to care anymore. This thing is pushing us to a place where you just give up. That's where it's going. It's going to a place where they want us to give up. They want us to give up. If you have so many events happening back to back, the idea is that, well, you're going to stop fighting. But I refuse to do that. I refuse to do that because you just have put in your mind, these people, all these victims, all these names that we're hearing, all these names you're adding to the list, they're human beings. They could be you, they could be me, they could be our kids, they could be our brothers. It could be anybody. So we can't stop. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know you're here. So now today, one of the things like I started with this yesterday, and I said one of my biggest problems is people who want to defend, who want to temper, who want to soften, who want to dilute what's going on. And I'm telling you, man, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. No more. No more. No excuses, no defenses, no subtle suggestions that, oh, maybe this is different. No more. We're done with that. We have enough evidence now. We have enough proof for the whole world to see that there's something going on. That being black in America and being on these streets and driving your car, if you're driving a new car, you're just putting yourself in a position where you are just going to be subjected to all kinds of treatment. You're going to be subject to all kinds of treatment. And that's why it's annoying. That's why it's annoying to have people try to defend this. Because the trend that I see that always bothers me is this, this attempt to blame the victims. Everybody always trying to blame the victims. And it's like, it's stupid. It's no longer something that you can do, because we're in a situation where no matter what you do, you still run the risk of being treated like a criminal in your own country. That's what's going on. You run the risk of being treated like a criminal in your own country. And one of the things that I think people miss when we have this conversation, people miss this word, dignity. Dignity. The preservation of the black man's dignity in this nation must be a big deal for us. It's dignity. What's missing in these conversations is dignity. Dignity for the victim, dignity for the person being shot, dignity for the person being tasered, dignity for the person being pulled over and harassed. What's missing is dignity. And I think one of the most annoying things, like I was saying in the other video, is for the case of Officer Navarro, you have a case where they were yelling at this man off the jump, right off jump. They were yelling with guns drawn. And that's all we need to know. That's all we need to know. If you're pulling somebody over for not having a license, properly displayed license plate, you don't start off at 100. You do not start off at 100. And I know somebody asked me the question, oh, are they supposed to just let people go? That has never been the issue. There are a lot of people who got tickets for license plates being missing. A lot of people went to jail for warrants. You can do your job. The police officer can do their job. But it does not have to start off with adrenaline at 100. And the challenge is, this looks like that's reserved for certain people. Certain people are approached as though they're already going to commit a crime. And that doesn't excuse, criminals. But if you start off approaching citizens, a certain class of citizens, as if they're criminals already, then the system is broken. And that's why I say, right now, I'll be honest with you, this is not the time to talk about compliance, because compliance is not the problem here. If you're here, drop me a line. Come on, if you're here, drop me a line. Let's talk about this. I don't know if you have any feelings about what's going on with the shootings and all the developments. I want to catch you up a little bit. Many of you probably read it already, but the police officer who shot Dante Wright, she resigned. She's been charged right now with second-degree manslaughter. And, now because she retired or she resigned, she might be, if she doesn't get convicted, in court, she resigned just in time for her to preserve her benefits and her pensions and all that, right? So, and then there are a lot of people who are on here trying to make it seem as though, yeah, what's up? Yeah, what's up? What's up? Some of my mass murders get paraded in police. That's what I'm saying. You can apprehend the most dangerous people in this country, mass murderers, people who spray entire, taken to Burger King after shooting up a church, sister. You can do that. You can always de-escalate with the worst among the worst. Carl Rittenhouse, doing that protest, shot people and then left the group of people he had shot and the ones he killed, walked towards the police officers with a gun raised. They didn't even stop him because, even though people were yelling, he just shot a man, he just killed a man. Not a reason to get rough with him. But license plate is missing, we're going to draw our guns on you. What's up, okay? Well, sister, okay, good to see you, man. So, I mean, just, I'm doing this and, I know my timing is awkward these days. I don't have my flyer up, so it is what it is. But I'm going to put this down. I'm going to put this video down to let people know that it doesn't have to be this way. And also to challenge all these people. It's saddening and tiring. And that's why I'm doing the video, sis, because there's a temptation, and I felt it. There's a temptation to give up. There's a temptation to give up. The next sound you hear, you're just like, what's the point? We're in the middle of the trial of Derek Chauvin for the killing of George Floyd. And right behind us, they said about 10 miles away from where the trial is happening, is where this other thing is happening. And it's like, okay, so what's the point? Is there anything going to change? But I feel like there are changes. They may not manifest right now. Some of the things we do right now, they're not for right now, right? Some of the fight that we do, some of the noise we make on air and all that, some of those things are not for right now, right? It's to set the stage that the revolution must continue and change must happen. Now, people are resigning, police chiefs resign. I'll be honest with you. It's not what we want. It's not the big change we want, but this is a different vibe right now. It's a different vibe where they resign before we even get to the conversation. Before a lot of people just stick out the job, they'll wait till everybody forgets about it, But these days, there's enough pressure to make people resign. Chiefs of police are resigning, commissioners are resigning, supervisors are resigning, But I'm saying that's part of the result of the pressure we put on, the fact that we're not backing off. So I want to encourage everyone who's affected by this, who's involved in this, who feels this. Don't give up. Don't stop pushing. It's your boy JFK. Don't stop pushing. We're out here in the building, And I'm telling you right now, I want us to reduce the amount of victim blaming that's going on. It's victim blaming, y'all. It's victim. Every time we have these cases, you have a group of people who they think they're being fair by talking about, but you're missing the point. There's a power dynamic here. There's a power dynamic, and that's where this problem comes from. Because you have a lot of these law enforcement officers, a law enforcement officer stopping you in your vehicle, there's a power dynamic. He has the backing of the law. He has the backing of the authority of the land. He has firearms. He has training. He has things on his side that put him in a position where you're more or less, you have to pay attention. You have to listen. You have to cooperate. You have to be more or less conciliatory. And that's what people miss. What we talk about, there's a power dynamic. There's a power dynamic. And so when you talk about the victims in these cases, why didn't he also? You have to understand what's going on. And the case the case that the Virginia case is actually one of the biggest examples of when you have a situation where you have a military lieutenant. You have a military lieutenant who, with all his training and with his rank, is still being treated like a dog, right? And that's the piece that people skip over. It's the power trip. The power trip is a big problem with how either our police officers are trained or how some of these police officers themselves are built. And you can't keep stepping over that and pretend like there's something else to discuss. Every time we talk about this and you bring up the issue of, oh, why didn't he comply? And I was ranting about this yesterday because it was a point I really wanted everybody to get. I want everybody to really get this. I mean, you can share the video, Sister Aquay, share the video if you think, you can get some people on here, but I wouldn't want to get people's views. But I'm going to read what you have here. What is changing? We need to change fast. Can't go jogging, can't go in the car, can't fall asleep in the drive-through line, can't play at the playground, can't get Skittles, can't try to cash a $20 check. I'm not justifying bad behavior, criminal acts, but this is why we have court systems. The standard response is normally, I fear for life. But she couldn't say, this is, you covered it. If you're here, drop me a line, man. We're talking about these killings and the attitudes we have. Sister, you covered it. You covered it. Because I tell people, criminality in our system has a prescribed process for it to be dealt with. It has a prescribed consequence. It has described sentencing if you're found guilty or if you plead guilty. You can't be out here killing people for not complying. This is the madness I'm hearing. People shouldn't have to die because they're not complying. Honestly, it is because we have so lowered the standard because of all the atrocity and all the fear that we are now forced to live with that we're talking on this level. We're not engaging on a level where compliance is like, oh, is the price of entry. And that's not the case. That's not the case. The law does not, the Constitution does not say thou must comply. Let's be real. We talk about these things as if people don't have rights. You're telling people to forgo their rights. That's what you're doing. Every time you make it seem like, oh, you're supposed to bow down to police officers. And I get it. Like I said yesterday, man, look, if I get pulled over, I'm doing everything to make sure the officer, feels like, all right, I'm complying. I'm doing all that. But I'm taking notes and I'm trying to figure out when this is over, how I can get the system to acknowledge that I was done a great injustice. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean saying that, if a police officer pulls you over, comply. Doesn't mean that you have no rights. It only means that we're saying suppress your rights because the system is unjust. That's what we're saying. It's like we're all admitting that your rights are going to be violated, but just take it so that you don't die. I understand that. I understand we're telling our children, be compliant. That's good. But when you're saying that, understand that what you're telling your child is you have rights, but it doesn't matter. That's the tragedy. But I'm saying let's not settle for that. While we understand that, it doesn't mean we should sit in that place where you and I are in agreement that even though we have rights, we do not have the right to assert our rights. Do you understand? It's an undermining of the entire concept. We're doing it out of necessity because, all of it, because don't forget what we're saying. Don't forget what we're saying when we're saying, oh, why don't you just comply? Just obey. Just comply. Just obey. What you're saying is we're not dealing with rational actors. That's what you're saying. The reason you're telling me, the reason you tell all these victims, the reason you tell all these people to comply, just comply with the police officers. Just be quiet. Just put your hands up. Just obey them. The reason you're telling me this is because you know, and I know, that there's a likelihood that the police officer I'm dealing with is not a rational actor. That's what we're saying. That's what we're settling for. They're not reasonable. Therefore, we have to forget that we have rights. And all I'm saying is if we continue to only have that conversation, not only will nothing change, it will be so solidified that we will one day forget what the rights are of a citizen when they get pulled over by the police officer. That's where we're heading right now. Because we can't even talk about our rights anymore. And that's where I want us to focus. And that's why I said dignity is a big deal. Dignity, if I have dignity in my own country, in the land I live, I should be able to assert the rights that that land gives me, that Constitution gives me. But if you're telling me because I'm dealing with law enforcement that will not recognize or respect my rights, that's the first admission, right? We're all admitting that the police will not respect your rights. Therefore, just comply. Just comply. And that's where I feel that the error comes from. Because we contribute, by saying that, we contribute to the notion that some police officers have that they do not have to respect our rights. Hence the power trip that we see. In the case of, in the case of this officer, this lieutenant, my goodness, there's nothing in that video more than a power trip. Nothing. That's what a power trip looks like. And I think I'm gonna play some of that. I'm gonna play some of that. That's what a power trip looks like. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know how you feel about everything going on. That's what a power trip looks like. When he's yelling at this officer, and he knows right now that he's intimidating this man. He knows. And I'm sorry, but I believe that that police officer enjoyed humiliating this military officer. It looks so much like he just wants to bend this guy. He wants to crush him. He wants him to bend down. And that is where, when people want to talk about, oh, you have to be calm, you have to be, yes, but it shouldn't have to be that. I should be able to assert my rights. And I addressed a friend of mine who said, oh, wouldn't they have done the same thing to, a white person pulled over? And the answer is, statistically and with probabilities right now, the answer is no, they wouldn't have. That's why we don't see too many videos of white people getting shot after they've complied. You know what I'm saying? With more and more the examples we're seeing and the videos we're seeing and the information that's coming out there's a disparity. There's a particular group of people who's bearing the brunt of suffering on the basis of them not complying. And as I pointed out in yesterday's video, there's something that I need people to understand about compliance. In order to properly comply with an instruction, the instruction has to be clear enough. The instruction has to be sufficiently clear. And so with the example of this lieutenant, we have a different story where we can actually it's an experiment for us. For everybody who says just comply, the case of Caron Nazario, who's Black and Latino, is perfect. That case is perfect. Because if you're going to sit there and just say, oh, compliance is all you need, then I'm going to show you the case of an officer who, in trying to comply, was not even able to identify which instruction he's supposed to comply with. Right? Which instructions he's supposed to comply with. All right, let's see if I can get this audio in there. See if I can get this audio. All right, here we go.
It's only myself. Why are your weapons drawn? What's going on?
Open the door slowly. Step out. Get out of the car now.
What's going on?
Get out of the car now. Get out of the car.
Sir, just get out of the car. Work with us and we'll talk to you. Get out the car.
You received an order. Obey it.
And that's it. You received an order, obey it.
How many occupants are in your vehicle?
So body cameras attached to both officers, Daniel Crocker, also recorded.
Open the door slowly. Step out. Open the door. Get out the car.
Get out of the car now.
I'm serving this country and this is how I'm treated.
Yo, what? Guess what? I'm a veteran too. I learned to obey. Get out of the car. What's going on? You're fixing to ride the lightning, son. car now.
What's
Get out.
Get out of the car.
Get out now.
I have not committed any crime.
You're being stopped for a traffic violation. You're not cooperating at this point right now. You're under arrest for. You're being detained. Okay, you're being detained for obstruction of justice.
Violation. I do not have to get out the vehicle. You haven't even
Really?
Stop.
Really?
Get your
Get
hands.
out of the car now. Get out of the car.
Get your hands off me.
Get out of the car.
Get your hands off me. You know what? Get your hands off me.
Not a problem. Back up,
I
Daniel.
didn't do anything.
Sir.
Get out of the car now.
Sir. Hey, sir.
Get out of the car now.
Sir. Look.
I'm trying to talk
Get out.
to you.
Okay.
I'm trying to
I'm
talk
gonna talk
to
to
you.
you. Just get out of my
Relax.
car.
Can you please
Get out.
relax? Can
Get
you
out.
please relax?
Get out of the car right now. Now.
This is not how you treat a vet. I'm actively serving this country, and this is how you're gonna treat me.
Back up, Daniel.
I didn't do anything. Whoa, hold on. What's going? Hold on.
Air Force. Good boy. Get out of the car. Get out of the car now.
That's up. That's
Get out of the car now.
Sir, just get out of the car.
I'm trying to breathe.
Get out of the car now.
That's up. That's really up.
This is crazy.
Get out of the car and get on the ground now. You're gonna get it again.
I don't even want to reach for my seatbelt. Can you?
Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car.
Can you please?
Get out of the car now.
Look.
Listen. Take off your seatbelt and get out of the car.
This is crazy.
Look, I'm just
If you're
gonna
joining
just
me, man,
please.
watch
You're gonna
this
do what you're
video
told. Get out of the car.
with the officer.
Look,
Drop in the comment. What do you think is going on?
Take
What do
your
you think
seatbelt
about
off
everything
and
we're
get out of the
saying?
car.
hands are out.
Don't reach in there, Daniel. Don't reach in there.
My hands are out. Please. Please, look. This is really messed up. My dog is in the back.
Hey,
My dog is
This is
choking
crazy.
right
Get out of the car.
This is crazy.
Take your seatbelt off. What are you, a specialist corporal? What are you?
I'm a lieutenant.
Lieutenant, get out of the car. Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car. You made this way more difficult than you just comply. Get out of the car.
Reaching for my seatbelt.
Fine. Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car. Straight on the ground.
All right,
On
yeah,
the ground.
all right. I'm gonna
Get on the
stop it
ground.
right here. I'm gonna
Get on
stop
the
it right
ground
here.
now. Get on the ground and get sprayed again. Get on the ground.
Can you please talk to me about what's
Get on
going
the ground.
on?
Get on the ground now.
Can you please talk to me
Get on
about
the
what's
ground.
going
Get on the
on?
ground.
Can you please talk to me about what's
Yes, sir.
going on?
You're not.
Can you please talk to me about what's going on? Why am I being treated like this?
You're
Why?
not cooperating. Get on the ground.
Why am I being treated like this? This is really messed up. This is up. This is up.
You know, I mean, this is a video that's showing you what I'm talking about at the beginning of this video. It's about dignity. It's about dignity. The question is, does a black man in America have dignity? That's it. That's it. Because if I have dignity in this country, then you should approach me the way you would approach anybody else. We've seen people pulled over where officers will have you pull over and then walk toward your vehicle and address you. This. I mean, is there anybody out there who doesn't understand that courtesy right there, that treating you like a citizen is important? Walk over to me and tell me. You watch the movies and you have a sense of how it's supposed to go down. He wasn't running away with the car. He pulled over to a well-lit location because he was trying to comply with the order to pull over. How you keep saying you're not complying when the first test of compliance is whether or not I pull over, and I'm pulling over. And you start out treating me as if I'm not complying with what? How do you comply when there's a gun, when there are two guns drawn on you? How do you comply when you saw that, there have been cases where people complied and were taken in handcuffs and still died afterwards? These are the things you need to consider. So, I mean, miss me with this nonsense. It's not just about compliance. You heard the officer, you need to obey. You need to obey. Do you understand that kind of language? That's master-slave language. You need to obey. You need to obey. The yelling, the bravado, that's a power trip. Look at him, look at the man and say, oh, what are you, a corporal? What are you? Like, just diminishing, even if he was a corporal, even if he was a recruit. Dignity. That's the word, dignity. Let me make it more complicated for you. A potential criminal still deserves to be dignified, still deserves to be treated with dignity, because we have a system of law that helps us determine whether someone who's accused of a crime is actually guilty of it by conviction or by pleading guilty. So until you get to the point where you're guilty, and think about it, even when you are guilty of a crime, even when you are sentenced, we have a system in this country that's designed on paper to give you some dignity even in jail. Do you understand what I'm doing? So the system is supposed to work with dignity for the citizen at all times. If you're here, drop me a line. What do you think about that, these stories? I mean, Dante Wright is a story where it's hard to talk about because, I mean, the truth is, a man is dead. A young man is dead, 20 years old. And the tendency, this desire for people to come up and immediately say, oh, why was he running? How come he had a warrant? Why did he try to run? It's like, oh, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? Are you telling me you don't understand why a black man who's been pulled over is trying not to get arrested, is trying not to get cuffed? You don't get that. With everything we've seen, everything we protested about, the case that's going on right now for Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin was dealing with a black man who had been subdued. Derek Chauvin was dealing with a black man who was already in handcuffs and still killed him. And you're shocked that nobody wants to be taken in? No, you're just not being honest. You're just not being honest. I'm telling you right now, everyone who joins all these people, if you join these people to shout, oh, they should have complied, you're part of the problem. Let me break that down. Compliance is good. I started this session by saying, if I'm ever pulled over, I tell my kids, I tell everyone I know. We had a session about this in our church. We had a police officer speak to us. If you are pulled over, do your best to comply with every instruction. With every instruction. Go ahead, comply. But let us understand that we're complying, but we are all in agreement that our rights are being violated and we have no right to speak. And that's not right. That's not good. That's not the way a good society should function. A progressive society that wants to be known as an advanced society. It's a horrible precedent that we're setting, that we've set. Every time we yell, you should comply, you should have complied. You're making it seem as if we are slaves and the police officers are our masters. And in the word that was used by that officer Gutierrez, you should obey. You should obey. I learned to obey. I learned to obey. That's not the relationship. Technically, you work for me. But we can't even talk about that. We're so far away from that right now that everybody's begging me to just obey and lie down and comply because we forgot about what the actual relationship is between me and the police officer, right? That's not even on our radar anymore. If you're here, drop me a line, drop me a comment about what's going on. Dante Wright, all this and police brutality, the way law enforcement treats black people. And one of the things, I'm tired of people still trying to defend this. I'm tired of those who are trying to excuse it. I'm tired of people who are trying to explain it away and say, well, this is different. No, you're just deliberately whistling past the graveyard. The reality is the black man in this country has not been considered worthy of the dignity of a citizen. That's it. And every day as black men and black women too, we have to fight and claw our way to get some dignity, to get some respect, right? To be treated a little better. Every day, in every scenario, we're fighting for this. And for you to sit there and keep saying, well, you should be more subservient, or you should have been more compliant. You should bow down more. That's what you keep saying every time they kill one of us. You should have bowed down a little bit more. And I'm saying, screw that. Not because I won't bow down, but because you know it's wrong. Talk about what's wrong. While you're getting me to bow down lower, can you please say a word about what's wrong with the system? While I bow down lower when I shouldn't be. The language of this officer in this case is so clear. It's about authority. It's about domination. It's a power trip. And he was fired because, again, when you go back to the procedure and policies of the police department and of the Constitution and the laws and the way things should be, It turns out a citizen has a right to ask a police officer to clearly explain to them why they're being pulled over, why they're being arrested, why they're being detained. Furthermore, if you're pulling me over for a traffic violation, the law and the system designs it so that you give me a ticket. I stay in my car, you give me a ticket, you run my license. We have a system for this. So where is the gun coming from? Well, and then I'm just mad at those of you who are out there today, and all you can say is you should have complied more. Like, no, address the problem. My compliance. Let me explain something to you. There's almost nothing in the Constitution that tells me to comply. There's nothing that tells me to comply. Most of the things that are in the Constitution speak to the police officer. It tells the police officer he cannot stop me without probable cause. He tells the police officer he cannot arrest me unlawfully. A lot of the things that the Constitution carries is to protect me from abuse of authority by the police officer. That's what our law sits on. And every law that the police department, moves with, the penal code, they derive their authority from the Constitution and from the legislature. And a lot of things are built into our laws, even our legislation, to make sure that I am not subjected to just a wanton search, a wanton seizure. The whole system is designed so that I'm not treated like a slave. But here we are with this conversation, and y'all want to immediately come into, you should bow down a little bit more. So I should just remove any shirt of dignity that I have because this officer's on a power trip. That's exactly what y'all saying. Because you're not ready to talk to the officer and say, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. No, you don't want to have that conversation. You want to keep talking to the guy that's being put down on the ground, pepper sprayed, and telling him, well, why didn't you just cooperate? Cooperate with what? An illegal order? That's what it is. You've heard it said that soldiers are bound to obey every lawful order. If a commander-in-chief gives you an unlawful order, it creates a problem for a soldier. So if a police officer is giving me an unlawful order, yes, I should have the same right to say, why am I being told to do this? If I'm being, did you get the exchange? He told the officer, if I'm being pulled over for a traffic violation, then you should give me a ticket. You're not supposed to be drawing your gun on me because of a traffic violation, because this lieutenant knows the law. But what y'all telling all of us is, even though we know the law, even though we know our rights, and I say y'all are telling us, I'm telling us too, but I'm also tempering it with the other part of the story. That's what I'm upset with. I'm not upset with you telling people, look, if the police are pulling you over, you have an encounter with law enforcement, you need to behave in a way that's going to get you home. That by now, let me tell you something. By now, we've said that so much, everybody's heard it. Okay? Let's not deceive ourselves. The average African-American child, the average minority person already has a sense that when you interacted with the police, you try your best to be compliant. And you can see with Officer Navarro, he literally just, he's an Army lieutenant, bro. If he was a white Army lieutenant, would you be surprised if he yelled at the cop? He could yell at the cop and get away with it. I'm sorry, that's an anecdotal hypothesis I'm putting out, but I believe that. I believe if he was a white Army lieutenant, first of all, they probably wouldn't even bother pulling him over. But if they did and drew their guns, he would be yelling back at them like, what in the name of God are you doing? And he kept saying that, why am I being treated this way? But he was so cool when he was saying it. So stop trying to pretend like you don't understand this is black and white. In this case, black and authority, right? So ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to hear it anymore where you come in and make it look like the victim is the problem. Stop it. Stop it. The victims are not the issue here. Because for everything you want to point out that any of these dead African Americans did in their encounter with the police, I promise you, a bunch of white people have done the same thing and gone home scot-free. That's the thing that you can't skip over that. You can't skip over that. So while you're having a conversation about, oh, let's behave, let's let's antagonize the police officer. What you're telling me is that this police officer is capable of being antagonized, right? He's not a rational human being. So I have to basically suspend my dignity. And that's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. The relationship between a citizen and a police officer is not that of a slave and master. I'm not subservient to the police officer. I'm not supposed to be, considering I'm a taxpayer and my taxes somehow end up paying for his salary. It cannot be. It cannot be that my relationship to the police officer is that I am a second-class citizen to him. The authority of the state that he carries is on my behalf. My goodness. Indirectly, I gave him the authority to be a police officer. I do not then become his servant because he decides to use that authority or abuse it over me. This is the narrow conversation I want to have today. There's a lot going on. But please and please, when we're talking about this, be careful how you talk about compliance as though there is not a problem in the system. All he had to do was comply. All he had to do was obey. Is that how the Constitution says it? Or does the Constitution say there should be probable cause before you come out here and pull me over? There should be a basis if you're going to arrest me. And you should tell me what I'm being arrested for. And you can't make it up. You can't just come here and say, oh, you're obstructing justice. You know, that debate has gone on forever, right? Like they say, well, when someone says you're obstructing justice and resisting arrest, then there's a presumption that whatever you were doing was keeping the police officer from fulfilling a lawful process. If you're resisting arrest, it presumes that you're being arrested for something lawfully, leveled against you. So here's the problem. How can I resist arrest if my arrest is illegal? It's not a lawful arrest. It's not an arrest by law. Secondly, if I'm demanding a full accounting of why I'm being detained, how is that somehow me not complying? If cooperation to you means that you say jump and I say how high, that's not cooperation. That's coercion. That's intimidation. That's false arrest. All of that. You just kidnapped me, and you're making me do stuff at the because you got a gun pointed at me. That's not cooperation. That's coerced compliance. Do you know how bad it is that when you get to court, if you make me sign an admission, a confession on paper, one of the things that the defense will do, one of the things that the judge has to do before the judge takes your guilty plea is that the judge has to ask you and make sure you're pleading guilty without any influence from the state, without any threats, or you're not just pleading guilty because you're afraid. Even if you are afraid, the judge has to ask that question. Are you doing this of your own free will? So how in the world do you get to pretend to arrest me for something and you can't even tell me what you're arresting me for? It's one of the reasons that was stated by that police department for firing that officer, that he did not follow procedure because he did not respond to the civilian to explain to them why, not just that, he said something, he said, you're being pulled over because of traffic violation and you're being detained. And it's like, those two statements don't match in law. Do you understand that? Those two things do not match. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know you're watching. Those two things don't match. You're being pulled over because of a traffic violation, which normally should get me a ticket. Well, now I'm being detained because I'm not coming out of my car to be arrested. So there are all kinds of wrongs in there. So let's deal with that. Let's deal with power tripping officers. In the case of Dante Wright, it's a really weird case. I'll be honest. Dante Wright is a weird case. That's why I'm talking more about Officer Nazaro's case, because that's a really good case for me to prove my point that what we're dealing with here is a power dynamic where the police officer is tripping on power, and I'm supposed to be subservient. Every time that police officer says, comply, 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 what he's saying is, I am the master and you are the slave. I'm sorry, that's what he's saying. And that's why it's not just a question of, oh, just comply, just comply. Where's my dignity? Where are my rights? Is everybody just saying, let's just sign away our rights because we don't want to get killed by Robocop over here? The problem I have with that is, on the one hand, practically, yes. Yes, practically lie down, roll over, jump up and down. When he says jump, you say how high? Because you don't want to get shot. But is anybody looking at that scenario and thinking that's a good scenario? That's horrible. If the fear of death is making me forego my rights, that's intimidation. I'm a hostage. That's what you're saying. I'm a hostage. That's a kidnapping. I can't move around of my own free will because I'm afraid I'm going to get shot. That's the threat the police officer is holding over me. And because in this case, it's an unlawful arrest, he doesn't have the backing of the authority that I gave him. When the police officer is not acting lawfully, he doesn't get to use the authority of the law. If you're an off-duty police officer and you're involved in a fight and you beat people up, you don't get to claim the authority of the state to defend yourself in the case relating to to the assault. Why? Because when you're off duty, you don't have the authority of the state behind you. It's the same thing when you're acting outside the law. When the police officer is acting outside the law, he doesn't have the authority of the state backing him up. And so when you're talking about people, complying and obeying, let's be real. Let's be real. If the compliance you're talking about is me being subservient and being a slave, that's not compliance. What you're getting is coercion. And you know what? There's some merit to just going along while you're in front of the officer, like this lieutenant did, and he went behind, filed his lawsuit. The officers got kicked out of the force, at least the one officer. Yeah, that's the way to do it. But I feel like sometimes we use that as an excuse not to talk about what the problem is, because we say, "Oh, just get through the episode, get through the ordeal. On the other side, you'll sue them." Let me tell you something about suing the city and suing cops. It's not fun. Not everybody wins. Not everybody wins anything substantial to cover for the shame and all the trouble, the trauma they're going to go through. And we're talking about victims that survive, right? Because victims that don't survive those encounters, they have no benefit coming from any lawsuits. They have nothing coming. Dante Wright is not going to benefit from any lawsuit. Do you understand what I'm saying? George Floyd is not going to benefit from the conviction of Derek Chauvin. That conviction, if we get it, will just be a signal and a sign of progress in a fight to prevent other people from dying like George Floyd. But George Floyd himself will not be participating in any victory parties, whatever happens, with Derek Chauvin. So the victims of these encounters who die, there is no recourse for them. So it's not simply a case of, oh, just comply, and then on the other side, you'll sue them for money. You cannot get more compliant than George Floyd. The testimony in the Floyd case is you can't watch it. If you're here, drop me a line. I don't know how many of you are watching the Floyd, George Floyd, Derek Chauvin murder trial, but there are parts of it where you got to turn it off. At least I did. Because the expert was testifying that watching the video, you could see parts where George Floyd was basically trying to use his knuckles to push up a little bit from the floor while he was being handcuffed. He was shifting his body around to see if he can get his knuckles to touch the ground. He wanted to push his body up a bit because his abdomen was being crushed against the pavement. The doctor said that there are stages of trying to breathe, that when you can no longer get it, from your chest. Lola, what's going on? Yeah, man, I can't watch it. I can't watch it. But what I've been doing is I've been listening to it on the radio so I can deal with it a little better. So I'm not watching videos of anything they're putting up, but the descriptions are bad enough. Because that doctor, this is a doctor of physiology, and I posted on my page. I think that might have been one of the most important testimonies of this entire trial, because he came to destroy the argument of Derek Chauvin's defense team that somehow George Floyd died of an overdose, of a mix of chemicals and bad health. He totally destroyed all of that because he explained what happens when there's asphyxiation. And he talked about how, because they were pressing both his abdomen, it was mind blowing, because we're all talking about the knee on the neck, which we all know. But this doctor made it clear that don't forget the knee on the back. Oh my goodness. The knee on the back, because he talks about breathing from the diaphragm, bro. And I knew this before, but because I sing and we talk about the diaphragm and breathing, but when he put it together, my mind was blown. He said, because when you're breathing from the diaphragm, the whole system is engaged in you getting oxygen. So the knees on the neck with that pressure, the arms are behind the back with that pressure. There's a knee on the back as well, bro. So every avenue that the body has to compensate for an inability to breathe, to inhale or exhale, every one of those avenues had been cut off. My goodness. You cannot get more compliant than George Floyd lying down. But even after compliance, maximum compliance has been achieved, the knee was still on the neck. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why I keep telling you, it's not enough to talk about compliance. We need to focus on these power tripping officers. We need to focus on how we recruit. What kind of people are being recruited? Because it takes a certain kind of person to come to work and to treat people like this. And I'll say it again, even potential criminals in our system deserve dignity. That's how we're able to preserve somebody's innocence throughout the process, where if we find out, oh, they never did it, they were never guilty, they can still have a life after it. That's what we try to do with the system, because we don't want to crucify you on the mere suspicion until when evidence is established. Then you're worthy of incarceration, you're worthy of probation, you're worthy of rest, whatever it is the court determines that will be your punishment. But we try to wait up until that point before we start treating you like you need to be killed. I say this as somebody who comes from a country where, I saw and I experienced some mistreatment of a suspect, only to find out the suspect is innocent. Because unfortunately, in some systems in the world, you treat a suspect as though he was already guilty, already found guilty, because you think that will make him confess his guilt, which is one of the reasons why the American system is a unique system on paper, right? And that's what I'm fighting for here. Let's not get to the point where we discard what's good about the criminal justice system in this country because the law enforcement agents we have cannot fulfill their roles within the four corners of the authority they're granted. Every police officer is operating based on authority given to him by statute, the penal code, and the code of conduct for the police department. These documents guide a police officer. So a police officer's authority is derived from these documents. These documents are the handiwork of legislators. These legislators are people that we, quote unquote, elected to represent us. So full circle, the police officer derives his authority from my representatives who are working on my behalf. And so the authority dynamic between myself and the police officer is not a master-servant one. It's a citizen and a public servant. That's the status quo. That's the default. Now it might change. It might change to law enforcement against a perpetrator of crime. That's a different assignment. In that situation, I am if I'm the one who's guilty of a crime or who's been suspected of being guilty of a crime, then I am to be captured. I am to be detained. I am to be processed. But until we get to that stage, I am a citizen, and the police officer is a public servant who works to serve and protect my community, including me as a member of that community. That's the starting point of relationship. It should never begin with the officer treating me like he's already convinced I'm a criminal or that he's proven it already in court. That's what's happening. You're treating people as if you've already convicted them in court, and then it's almost like, you're killing them first, and then we go through the trial to find out whether they're guilty of what you killed them for, right? Because that's what's happening with George Floyd. He died, and then the rest of us watched the video, and then we started finding out, was it a counterfeit note he passed? Did he really pass a counterfeit note? If he did pass a counterfeit note, did he know it was counterfeit? Was he also a victim of somebody who gave him a counterfeit note? All those questions came after he was dead. This is the dynamic that we need to stop. It's not enough to just say comply, comply, comply. Let's talk to the police officers and say behave, behave, behave. Come on. Because I'm feeling that this conversation about compliance, as important as it is beginning to overshadow the issue of the fact that we have rogue police officers. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know what you think about, what's going on with the police and the people. Let me put it this way. Do you think that it's just a question of compliance? Do you also believe it's a matter of, just obey, just comply? Do you think it's that simple? And what do you say to those who have died even though they complied? My bad. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know what you think about this. Because what do you think of those who complied, but yet they didn't make it home? That pokes a hole in the narrative. It's not just a question of compliance. We need to continue to put pressure on our officials, on law enforcement, that they need to do better. They need to do better in training. They need to do better just in humanity. And I know that there are a lot of police officers who are on the other side of this, who are in the force to do good, who are great for their community. After all, they come from the community. We had a police officer friend come speak to us in my church in the wake of a lot of the riots and protests to explain the interaction and the situations. So we have good people around us who are law enforcement, the brothers and sisters. But it's difficult to have a conversation about them right now, because our spotlight should be on the ones that need not be on the force. That officer, in the matter that we just put up, that officer, let me play you a little bit more of this interaction with the lieutenant, and then, we'll talk a little bit more about it.
I agree. All you have to do is listen. Why didn't you do what we asked, sir? Why didn't you just do what we asked? No, you weren't. You were not. My partner put his blue lights on.
Yes.
You didn't stop.
I was pulling over to a well-lit area for my safety and yours. I have respect for law enforcement.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No. Wrong answer, sir. If you did, we would not be in this situation right now.
If you're here, drop me a line. We just go through some clips of this, and I'm gonna pause right here. Yeah, I'm gonna pause it right here. So here's the thing. We have a case in which the police officer is telling him, all you have to do is comply. All you have to do is comply. And then when he raises the issue of why we're in this situation, he said, my partner turned on the blue lights and you didn't stop. And then the lieutenant said, I was pulling over to a well-lit area, which is evidenced by the fact that they didn't have to chase him. This was not a high-speed chase where you get out on the other side and you're like, oh, this is what you get for making us run after you. And I mean, if you watch it all the way to the end, if you find out what happened at the end, you get more infuriated. Because the officer, the police officer started to try to negotiate his way out of the situation. You know, this was trying to blame him for it. Like, you could have avoided all of this. You could have, and the guy was telling him, you have your guns drawn on me. How is anybody supposed to behave when you're staring at him and like you're looking at death? It's not a bluff when two police officers take their gun and point it in your direction. It's not a bluff. You've seen that happen to a lot of black people and you've seen them die. Why would you think they were bluffing? So of course he panicked. Step out of the car, step out of the car. Why? So you can shoot me clearly? I'm sorry. I mean, that's what came to my mind. Step out of the car. Well, I've seen you shoot people as they were coming out. So you know what? I'm just going to sit here and try to see if I can get you guys to explain what's going on first. That's not unreasonable, bro. That's not unreasonable. I need to know what's going on better before you're asking me to comply with an instruction that I don't understand. And I was saying that because on the one hand, they told him at the initial approach, show me your hands. And then he started yelling, get out of the car. And so the idea is, for me to get out of the car, I would have to unbuckle my seatbelt. One of my hands would have to leave your sight. Will you shoot me then? So they don't make the compliance is even difficult. I mean, have you ever been yelled at? Have you ever been yelled at the point of a gun? I can't say that I have fully, but I've had an experience where armed robbers came to our house in Nigeria, and I took a peek to see who just came in because they came through one big gate. I was coming in through the second gate, and as they were coming in, we would have converged. And I heard them yelling, and I saw the gun, and I just moved back slowly and ran off away from the house. So when you're talking about, and this is a lieutenant, so he's familiar with military procedures and practices. He probably knows about guns, but he's afraid because he's not in Afghanistan no more. He's not in Iran or Iraq. You know what? He's in a place where he could literally be shot dead. Why is everybody behaving like you don't get that? Let's talk about Dante Wright. Initially, he was being arrested, and then he bolted. And for all the people who say, why did he run? Why did he run? It's like, maybe because he's seen people shot or put on the ground. You know, maybe, you know, I mean, forget the obvious. Like, no one wants to be arrested, right? No one wants to be arrested. Warrant or not, you don't want to be taken in. So fine. The problem I have is, in the first place, what was the stop about? Now, we're going to find out more because that officer is now being charged with manslaughter. We're going to find out more what the offense is, what the charges are, and what the details are. But in that moment, if he was indeed pulled over for having something hanging from his rearview mirror, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. The officer didn't have to pull him over for it and shouldn't have. They shouldn't have pulled him over. But good, they pulled him over and they found out he had a warrant. And they're trying to arrest him. At any point in that whole interaction, there's no indication that Dante punched the police officer, attempted to punch the police officer. There's one consistent thing that Dante is doing throughout this period is trying to get away. That's his offense. Fleeing the scene, resisting arrest, that's his offense. And the system, our legal system, and all the penal codes have a process for dealing with people who resist arrest. I promise you, none of those processes include shooting them dead. They don't even include using a taser at close range. Because she was going to tase him in front of him, bro. You see from her webcam how close she was. She was going to deploy a taser directly to his chest. I'm going to go with her and assume she was trying to taser him and not shoot him. She was going to apply the taser directly to his chest, bro. If you're here, let me know you're here. If you're here watching, let me know. Let me hear your voice. We're just talking about how we should be careful the way we talk about complying. If we're going to do it at the expense of discussing the police brutality itself. I mean, I don't see a world in which we solve this if we lay all these emphasis on, yeah, just comply, and we don't address the issue. Because we're seeing compliance is not enough in every case. You can comply and get pepper sprayed. You can not comply and get pepper sprayed. So clearly it's not just a question of comply. And this compliance itself, there's a danger of us making it look as though the police officer is the master and we're the servants. Trust me, it feels like that in the moment, and you better behave like that in the moment so you can get home. But that should not stop us from discussing that particular reality. That should it be like that? Should the police officer be the person? Should the police officer have the right or the opportunity to treat me like a household pet? That's what you're talking about. Comply, obey, lie down, get out, comply, obey. Like a household pet. Do I have no rights at all? Do I have no dignity? Am I unable? Am I not permitted to ask to be treated better? Can I not say, why are you doing this? Or when I say that, you get angrier and you get more determined to humiliate me. And we're going to clap for that. And that's okay. So we just need to wake up. We need to wake up, and we need to stop victim blaming. And we need to stop making it as though compliance is something that the law requires of us. Because ordinarily, I wouldn't have a problem with the phrase, with the word compliance, right? Ordinarily. The problem I have is when we cannot distinguish between cooperating with a police officer and behaving like a puppy to make the police officer happy. That's the territory we're in. That's where we've gotten to. And even that doesn't guarantee we're going to go home. We're at the point where we're telling our children, put your hands on the steering wheel, don't turn your phone, don't hold your phone, turn it on, place it beside you somewhere to record at an angle, say yes, sir, say no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, 3 bags full, sir. Just turn yourself into a complete, puppy, like just whatever they say. If they say jump, you say how high, sir. We do that for survival, but we shouldn't have to. That's the part I think we're beginning to lose sight of. That's not normal. That's a coping mechanism, right? That's something we deploy in case of an emergency. That's break glass. But every day should not be an emergency. Every traffic stop should not be a potential death sentence. So we need to start changing that narrative, because it's part of the problem. Because we give voice to those who want to justify this ridiculous approach to Black people. You keep helping them when you say, yeah, they too should have complied. What do you mean by that? Are they dogs? Are they domestic animals? Do they not have a right to assert their rights? Do they have no rights? It's like you're saying, hide your dignity. On the one hand, I understand, yes, hide your dignity because you're dealing with a crazy person that's going to kill you. But someday we need to face the crazy person and say, stop killing us. Right? If we're so focused on our coping mechanism and our defenses, that we never turn around and find out why the attacker is attacking us, we're not safe in this position. Because as we're finding out, you could be in the process of complying and still get shot. What if the instructions you're hearing are conflicting or contradictory? So that when you're complying with one, you're disobeying the other, and you still get shot. There's a classic video. I don't have it here. I don't know if you saw this story. There's a classic video of this was not, this was actually I think the victim in this case was actually white. But it goes to what I was saying at the beginning. You have some people on the police force who are there to just assert authority. They love the idea of power. They love the idea of other people being underneath them. They want to command somebody. They want to control people. And the police, being a police officer, gives these guys the best cover and the best opportunity to practice that part of their personality. There's just video of I'm trying to remember. This dude was on the floor, two officers behind him. One of them said something like, lie down. And the other one said, crawl to me backwards. The guy turned around to say, well, which one is it? And they shot him dead because he wasn't complying. That's a case in which the instruction he wanted to comply with was not even clear, bro. How about that case where your instructions are not clear? When your instructions are not clear, when you comply. Comply with what? An instruction I don't understand? An instruction that's impossible for me to comply with? George Floyd on the floor, knee on the neck, knee on the back, and you have people saying, stop resisting. I was like, stop resisting? My body's trying to stay alive and it's fighting for itself. I can't stop that. I'm trying to breathe. You call it resisting. It's me trying to breathe. So it's not enough. That's my word. It's just not enough to keep saying people just comply. We need to address the fact that I am a citizen and this police officer works for me. Right? And that's really what I wanted to say today. There's a lot going on, but it's sad. It's very sad. It's very sad. If you're here, drop me what do you think about these killings? How do you think we can get out of this? Let me know. Give me a line. Let me know. Because all I'm saying is, while we're saying comply, we need to face the officers and say, stop killing us. Stop killing us. Honestly, there's a lot that saddens me about the Dante Wright case. It's a hard case. It's a hard case because on the one hand, I tend to believe the police officer that she shot him by mistake. I mean, it's not hard to see how that can happen. But I say the problem is the whole situation was escalated already. And when it's escalated, anything can happen. And a lot of people are saying, oh, what was she supposed to do? Let him get away? Let me shock you with my answer. Yes. Yes. If the risk posed by trying to apprehend someone, either by them or by you, outweighs the risk of letting them get away. Lola, that's what, I mean, it's not even, but a lot of the issue is this. I mean, compliance is really the only weapon we have. Lola, compliance is the only thing you have in that situation, honestly. I mean, I agree. What I'm saying is what you're saying, that this is not just a case of comply. However, comply is the only thing we have if we do not address the main issue, the monster in the room. We should not be treated like this. Let's have one voice on that point. Let's have one voice on that point and stop diluting our own arguments with, well, maybe if they comply. That's a different conversation. As a matter of fact, that's a conversation in-house. That's what I tell you. That's what you tell me. That's what I tell my kid. But when we're having a discussion on police brutality and how our people are being killed, that's the time to address the killers. That's the time to address the system from whence the killers are coming. we've gone, and that's why your point, the time for compliance is long gone, to the extent that compliance is not the solution anymore. Compliance is a coping mechanism. Compliance is a defense system we've built. We have realized that our best shot of coming out, let me not use the word shot, we have realized that the best chance we have of surviving such encounters with law enforcement as Black people, as Black men, is to be as subservient as possible, to be as non-combative, to be as non-belligerent, to be as gentle as a dove, to be so shy, to be so obedient, to really revert to slave status. That's really what we've come up with, because we're realizing that we need to come out of that situation. We need to live. So we tell ourselves, we tell our kids, just be calm, do whatever he says, listen to him, say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, whatever, I'm sorry, okay, I'm listening. Do what you need to do just to get up. But understand that as we say that, we're realizing that this is a horrible situation to be in. This is not right. I should not be in a situation where my survival depends on me forgetting that I have rights. It should not be that my survival depends on me completely burying every single piece of dignity that I have, because this is a moment where I might die if my dignity even rears its head a little bit. If I summon the self-respect to ask the officer, why am I being pulled over? I might die for that question. Why are you doing this? I might be pepper sprayed for that question. So forgive me if I'm not embracing the conversation about compliance, because I'm realizing in my head, when you say compliance, what you're saying is become a slave in that moment so you might live. That's not good. I'm a hostage. So don't reward the kidnapper. Don't tell me, the hostage, how to behave as a hostage, and neglect the conversation you should be having with the guy kidnapping me, holding me against my will. That's what we're doing. We're victim blaming, and the perpetrator's being told, you know what, I understand that you have rage. I'll talk to him, tell him how to calm down so he doesn't make you more upset. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. I'll talk to him. I'll tell him, dude, you just calm down. You know he crazy. He could shoot you. So why would you make him more mad? That's what we're doing. I'm saying that makes sense for survival, but that's messed up. That shouldn't be. And we need to fight to change that dynamic so we don't continue just having this conversation. I saw a video today from one of my brothers, Batunde, who said, yo, Babala, what did Killmonger say, man? Remind me what Killmonger said. And this is the problem. Yeah, I know Killmonger was on that we gotta fight back, mentality. All I'm saying, we just gotta speak up. Stop talking only to the victims, bro. Like that's done. I said, bury me in the ocean with the ships and my ancestors. I hear you, man. I hear you, Bob. I just hate to die before I get some stuff done. That's all I'm saying. What's going on? Draw me a line if you're here, man. It's your boy JFK. You're talking about this police brutality, and I'm ranting about how I do not think that we should just be talking about compliance, when we know that the problem is with the people enforcing this law this way. They're doing it against us. He said, for even they knew that death was better than bondage. You're right, Lola, but my problem is, if I can fight for the next generation, I might as well do that first. A lot of people did come over in bondage, but some of them did break free and went on to really save everyone else. So it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. If you're here, drop me a line. What do you feel about all these killings of Black people? And I just wanted to get to the point where we should no longer argue about whether or not it's happening. There should be no more debates about whether there's systemic racism. The evidence is here. There's enough proof. So now let's just deal with the problem and stop arguing about whether or not it exists. That's a whole new world. The Dante Wright thing is weird for me, because if I start off, and I do, believing that Officer Kim really mistook her gun mistook a gun for a charger. Everything from that point forward is a little more. It's just difficult all the way, because I do start with the statement, the idea that you don't have to use a taser for everything, bro. You don't have to tase everybody. You don't have to shoot everybody. Like, it's got to be a sliding scale of what qualifies. And like I said, Dante, from everything I've seen, I could be wrong. If you know better, let me know. My understanding, Mr. Dante Wright, was trying to escape, being arrested. He was just trying to flee. That's a different thing from trying to put the officers in danger, or put the officers in fear of imminent danger. So that's the condition in which I think you deploy a taser, deploy a pepper spray when you're threatened. You see, and that's the thing. When you're threatened, when you feel threatened, you deploying a taser, deploying a pepper spray, and as needed, deploying your firearm is something that can be understood. But and that's why I think it was Laquan McDonald, the police officer who shot him. I'm mixing up my cases. God have mercy. So many up names. I'm sorry. One of the victims of police brutality that ended up dying, that was shot in the back while running away. I think that's the case that recently got dealt with, and I think the officer was convicted, and it just, I mean, sometimes he might have gotten away, but I think it was just too clear, because some principles are just so big that even a system as corrupt as the law enforcement system in this country, as the justice system, a system as troubled. Let me not say corrupt. A lot of good people are trying to do good things. So a system as troubled as the American justice system still manages to identify some fundamental tenets, like don't shoot a dude in the back. If you shoot someone in the back, we're going to presume you just shot them in the back, because you will not be able to convince us that you shot them while they were turning around to shoot you, because the forensics will show that this person was shot in the back in a way that they were just taken by surprise because they were running away. And I analogize that to the Dante Wright situation. Yeah, he was trying to escape, which is wrong, and for which there are charges that should be brought up. But what the officer does, and when we talk like this, some people legitimately say we should be quiet because we're not officers and we don't understand. Well, oh, fine, I'm not an officer, but I'm a person who doesn't want to get shot. So excuse me while I try to suggest alternatives to the guy shooting me, right? So that's all I'm doing here. Like, I'm asking questions like, is it possible? Isn't it possible that you could have let Dante Wright drive away and arrest him later? Do you not arrest other people later? Are there not people in this country that are told to bring their lawyers and come to court and come to the precinct on their own? Are there not people in this nation who have been allowed to choose the date of their own surrender? What are you talking about? Why you got to shoot him right there? Why you got to shoot him right there? This is the point I'm trying to make. Why you got to taser him? If he makes it away from that parking lot, you know his name, you have his record, you probably still have his license, you know his mama's house. You're gonna get him. You're gonna get him. And you may be able to get him without endangering anyone's life. How about we prioritize that option? The part where nobody dies, where someone might escape for some time, but nobody dies. This is what I'm talking about. And that's my word on the Dante Wright situation. That's my position on that. I believe it was an accident, because I believe it was an accident. I believe I could even be wrong on that, but everything I see in that scenario, the way the police officer reacted before she shot him, her reaction after she shot him, the fact that they tracked down his car that got crashed, they tried to do CPR. You could say all of that is just nonsense, but for me, I having seen other situations where people died at the hands of police and they didn't even bother to even try to help them up. Yeah, I'm gonna take that into account when I'm trying to decide if this was done deliberately, right? So I believe that she didn't mean to shoot him. Well, what I have a problem with, aside from the fact that she shot him and killed him, is this notion that in order to stop him from escaping, she was going to taser him to his chest in front of him, close, point blank, close range, right? That's what she was in. That's what she wanted to do. The idea that that in itself was okay is the first issue I have. We do not need to approach every situation with the highest level of violence. You don't. You don't. Lola, what she said? Lola said, let me read this. The major overhaul of the criminal system, which we spoke of a few months ago, yet again needs to be expedited. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. The system needs to be, and that's why I guess my show tonight and my rant yesterday was me in my own way trying to push aside a narrative that's interfering with the conversation you just raised. We should all be on the same page to say the system has to change. I am here trying to make sure that we all agree on that if we can. I am here trying to push back on anyone who's trying to shift the focus of the conversation. People who want to say that the racism we talk about is not that serious. People who want to say we're making it up. People who want to say, oh, it's not about black people. People who want to tell us, oh, most officers are great. People who want to tell us that we're exaggerating, right? That's what I'm fighting tonight. Like we need to make sure that we come against those voices, we oppose those voices, and we show everyone the reason why we should be on the same page to change the system. The case with the lieutenant is a clear example. That officer was on a power trip. He was more upset about being disobeyed than he was about any violation of the law. Do you understand? Disobeying a police officer in itself is not a crime. On paper, right? But we've seen that if you disobey a police officer and you happen to disobey the kind of police officer who gets really upset, they will turn it into a crime on you and then deal with you as though you've been found guilty of a crime. All that officer was doing was just showing off on a power trip. He saw the guy in military fatigues. He saw him. He said, what are you, a corporal? What are you? The guy says, I'm a lieutenant. I mean, that came out of left field for him. He didn't expect that. That's why if you watch the video all the way to the end, he starts negotiating. He starts telling him, I talked to my chief and he says, I can let you go and we can forget all of this and none of us have to, I don't want to affect your record. Like, get out of here, man. Did you guys see? Oh, this is a good one. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know you're here. Hey, thank you, Shadi. That's all it was. Did you hear him? Did you hear the language he was using? Obey, comply, get on the ground, get on the ground. You're about to ride the lightning. This dude has been waiting all his life for a chance to do this to a soldier. I'm telling you, I'm a veteran too. Then what happened to you when you were there to make you this bitter and crazy? Because this was a full-on, you could tell, everybody who saw that video knew it was a power trip. It was really the officer saying, do you know who I am? And then when he said, what are you, a corporal? He was trying to make sure that this guy was beneath him. So I said, he needs multiple psych evals. Yo, this comment wins the internet. He needs multiple psych evals. Narcissistic disorders all over the place. And then, do you know the sad things that Shadi, I don't know if you agree with me. Lola, you're still here. I don't know how to feel about the partner, the rookie. I would say rookie, but I suspect the younger officer. I feel like that younger officer just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He just had the wrong partner for that day because he just seemed to be following along. Yeah, get out of the car. Yeah. You're gonna ride the lightning. Yeah, like he was just following his senior officer. That guy was on a power trip. And at the end, when he realized that he had messed up, I don't know, Sajade, did you watch the video all the way to the end afterwards when the paramedics came? Yeah, he was confused because the senior officer was behaving like a gangster, and it's tough. What is this? It's not. He can't tell his boss like, "Hey Joe, I think we should. I don't think we should do that to him." Like he didn't know what to do because it was so like this is not normal behavior for a police officer. It's not normal behavior. And I tell you something, there's a line in that interaction that really gets to me, that makes me want that officer not only to be fired. Yeah, I mean, if you had watched it to the end, like this is after the whole commotion and the fight. I think the medical guys came, and this is after they all realized that yo, we made a mistake. Do you know that he started negotiating with the soldier, telling him, "I just talked to my chief, and he's giving me the authorization to let you go. He's giving me the authorization. If you want to do it that way, uh, I could just let you be on your way, and none of us have to have any repercussions from this." And do you know that's the classic? I messed up. Please, can you forget this ever happened? That's what he was trying to do. And that's why I say for people who want to defend this kind of behavior, be careful. Because at the end of the day, you will be proven to be so wrong that even the person you're defending will do something to show that he was wrong all the way. Any of you trying to defend that police officer, come find out he was wrong. If you're here, drop me a line. Drop me a let's talk about this real quick. The officer was trying to negotiate when he found out that he had done wrong. He was trying to negotiate. He now started telling the brothers like, I talked to my police chief. He said we can let all this go. We can forget about all this. I don't want to mess up your record. Like, which record? You made me cry. You pepper sprayed me. You made me lie down on the floor, and you're telling me you don't want to mess up my record, bro. Forget that thing. He tried to cover up Babalola. He tried to cover up in the line of fire. He realized he effed up. And that's the thing that obsessed me. Like, in the middle of him yelling at this lieutenant, telling him he's going to ride the lightning, telling him to comply. He didn't have to be this bad. And when he was doing that, nothing in his lizard brain cautioned him to say, calm down, pull back, pull back. And I tell you the line that gets me. If you're here, drop me a line. Let me know you're here. Please drop me a comment, share, like, whatever. But I just, you know me, I enjoy just, even if it's just me, I'm happy. But I didn't see Lola is here. Do you know the line that gets me? I don't know if you guys heard this line. He said, I'm afraid to come out of the car. Right? The lieutenant said, I'm afraid to come out of my car. And the police officer said, you should be. That's it. And we're done. We're done with every attempt to defend this guy. We're done with, as a matter of fact, that is the heart of this conversation that I'm talking about. It is the dignity that has been taken away from black men, from black people. Dignity. The word is dignity. There's no, we've been stripped of our dignity. And that's why I'm saying something tonight that's tough to say, which is be careful how you keep saying comply, comply, comply. Every time you echo the words of of police officers like this one, they say, just comply, you know, and you fail to understand that by saying just comply, what you're saying is forget about your rights, forget about your dignity for now, so you can survive. It's when you're saying that it's a helpful thing to say to someone who is going through this or is going to deal with it. So I don't fault that. I myself tell people, comply as much as you can. Just do what they say. Be polite. Don't make any sudden movements. I tell my son that. I tell myself that. But let us all understand that that is not the ideal situation. That is not a good thing. That is not a good thing to be happening. Because what we are reinforcing is our coping mechanism against a bad system. But let us not neglect the conversation about the bad system while we just focus on our coping mechanism alone. Because eventually the shell we are constructing to defend ourselves from the battering ram of a bad system, that shell will not hold. And that's why many people have died while complying. Are you paying attention? So at some point, while we are saying comply to keep ourselves temporarily safe if we can, we need to rev up the noise to push back on the system that's beating us into compliance. That's the compliance itself cannot be the point. Obedience cannot be the point, because we technically and on paper, we do not work for the police. We are not their servants. I am not a domestic animal for police officers on paper. As a matter of fact, in the real relationship, I'm paying his salary as part of a group of people in the community. So the more you tell me to just bow down, bow down, bow down, the more you're telling me that my rights mean nothing. I have no dignity. In order for me to survive this encounter, I must become as a slave. And I'm telling you, that might work to help me get out of it. And we've seen people where it didn't even work for them. They were all the way underground and still shot. What I'm saying is the real problem is this system that's causing us to hide inside compliance. We need to make sure that we do not allow that system to get away without any indictment because we're too busy just trying to comply. Because the wholesale solution is going to come from us pushing the system away from a position where it forces us to cower in compliance. That's the change. You cannot comply more than some of the people who complied, right? There was no more compliance than Breonna Taylor, who was not given any instruction to comply with, but nevertheless was killed as though she didn't comply, right? This is where the whole argument fails if all you're going to talk about is compliance. We've seen people die complying. We've seen people die not complying. We've seen people die confused about what they're supposed to comply with. And we've seen someone die not even given an instruction because she was asleep. So it's not just about the compliance. We need to focus on the pressure that's coming from law enforcement and stop giving excuses, stop blaming the victim. I am not a servant to a police officer on paper and in law. If I become a servant or a slave to a police officer in a traffic stop because I want to survive and not die, that's a coping mechanism. It's not ideal. It's not the way things should be. I'm doing that because I have no choice. I'm doing that because there's a threat that I'm dealing with an irrational police officer. Yeah, the use of deadly force at the slightest opposition. That's my point, sis. That's my point. They're more worried about disrespect than violation of the law. This is the distinction. You pull someone over for not having plates, and upon pulling him over, you realize that the temporary tags are on the window. And in any case, you're supposed to give him a ticket, and you pull him over, guns drawn. Now, here's the irony, and I tell people this: they're trying to always, defend this rubbish, like, oh, he should have pulled over when he told him to. The law allows you to pull over in a safer location. If you don't know, learn. You're allowed to turn on your blinker to let the officer know that you are looking for the nearest safe location to which you want to pull over. For instance, if you're getting pulled over, if the police officer is giving you lights and you're close to a bend on a highway, you know that's a dangerous place to pull over because both you and the officer could be in danger. So you pull over a little more to an embankment where there is no such danger, and you're allowed to do so. And most police officers are supposed to be able to look at that and understand that, and just deal with you as though you pulled over, appropriately. This guy pulled over. It wasn't. This officer was waiting for action, right? Because they make it seem like they gave him the blue lights and he took off running, and that was never the case. That was never the case. They gave him the blue lights. He realized he was being pulled over. It's a dark location. He pulls up to the nearest gas station. He didn't run away. They followed him the whole way. His blinkers were on. And then he pulled over to a well-lit gas station. So they come out guns drawn for the disrespect of him not pulling over right away. That's his offense. Unfortunately, that is not an offense on the books. That is not an offense in the penal code. Disrespecting a police officer is not it's not an offense. As long as you don't hit the police officer, as long as you don't throw things at the police officer, as long as you don't threaten the police officer, you don't assault them, you don't brandish a weapon, it's not an offense to disrespect the police officer. Now, I say that knowing fully well that that's on paper. Most of these cases that we see, there's a sense in which the officer is trying to assert his authority over the person they're arresting. Like they feel a sense of disrespect that they have to knock down. Somebody made an observation about Dante Wright and that officer. The police officer, I think her name was Kim, she was training a new officer that day, from what I understand. I've not verified it. If you know better, let me know. Well, I'm working on off of that theory. She was training someone that day. So when you're training, if you've ever trained anyone for anything, when you're training, you're in this mindset where you're trying to show this person that you're a veteran, you know everything, you're on top of your game. They need to respect, your trainee needs to respect you, quote unquote. So when this officer was trying to enforce this arrest, first of all, the idea that they're pulling someone over because they have air fresheners hanging from the rearview mirror is already a sign that we have a problem, right? But then again, if you're training someone, you're looking for the first opportunity to do a routine stop, a random stop, just to show them how to pull people over, how to go through it. So all of that is legit to the extent that you're training someone, even though it's messed up, because stuff hanging from the rearview mirror should not come anywhere near something for which you pull someone over. And at the very least, when you pull someone over for something hanging in the rearview mirror, you're supposed to just call their attention to it, make them remove it, or give them a ticket at the worst, right? Fine. In this case, she decided to pull him over. She decided to run his information, realize he has a warrant. They get him to the point where they're about to arrest him. He runs away. Boom. This is the point at which, Dante puts himself in this horrible situation by running away. However, this is also the point at which the police officer has to make a decision on how to handle this situation without endangering anyone's life. That should always be paramount consideration. Safety of the officer and those around the officer, and then safety of the person against whom she's trying the person to whom she's trying to arrest, whom she's trying to arrest. Now, if you're trying to arrest somebody and they slip out and they run away while they're running on foot, the question is going to be, do you have to stop them with a weapon? Do you have to stop them with a taser, stop them with a gun? Is that something that you need to do? One, two. Is there a way, are you able to do that in a way that doesn't injure the person? Because even with the taser is not nothing, right? It's like, I have always been the one who advocates to say, please use a taser first before you use a gun. Not all situations will lend themselves to using a gun or using a taser, either way. But I feel many of the situations we've seen could benefit from a taser instead of a gun. Just increase the likelihood that the person you're interacting with lives. I know that's not too much to ask. I know that. I know I'm not asking for too much when I say try to increase the probability that the person you're chasing, dealing with, stopping, trying to arrest, try to increase the chances that they live as you increase the chances that you live as well. If you're in danger, by all means, pop off. Are you listening to me? If you're a police officer out there, because I'm thinking about my brother, my sister who's a police officer, people who I know, if someone's trying to take your life or do something to endanger you, your life or your limb or the limb of your partner, bro, sis, pop off. They need to go. All right? That's not in dispute with me. Nobody's going to turn around and try to shoot or stab or run over a police officer, and I'm going to expect the police officers just, pop off. Because that fits the very definition of your life being in danger. Imminent danger, yeah, you can shoot. You can shoot. But every other scenario where it's like, he's getting in his car, he's trying to run away because he has a warrant. Maybe go back to your car and see if you can chase him. If the chase is going to be dangerous, don't do it. Like I said, you have his license. Probably you know where he lives. There's so much. That's it. Preservation of life, your life, and then the life of the person you're trying to arrest. At the end of the day, let everyone be alive. That should be the way. I don't know what the training is. I suspect that's the training, but it's not being executed that way. Things are being escalated. And I've always said, I don't understand why everything has to go from 0 to 100. Why can't we have situations? Where are the de-escalation methods in the police force? Is there no training on how to de-escalate? And I know there is some, because we've seen how on video how some police officers deal with people of other persuasions, right? Let me just put on there. I've seen so many videos of white people yelling at the cops, telling the cops no, telling the cops, I'm not coming down from this vehicle. You don't have a right. You don't have the right to arrest me. I've seen police officers spend hours talking to these people, talking about, sir, just be calm. I understand. I've seen police officers be so nice to crazy white people. That's when I started getting upset with this scenario, because I used to give a benefit of the doubt. Like, look, if they're dealing with white people like this as well, then what am I saying? But bro, that's not what's happening. There's one video in particular. It's a favorite video of mine of white kid, this white man beat up these two police officers. Let me take this. Not my favorite video for the purpose of what happens in it, but it's my favorite video for illustration of what I'm talking about. White boy gets accosted by police officers. They approach him for something. He beats them up with their own sticks. He takes the car key for their cruiser and he drives away with their car. And in that entire interaction, there were a couple of opportunities where the officers could have tasered him or shot him. Because while he was beating one, the other one had the chance to do that. But they refrained, they restrained themselves from going that far. They let him beat them. They let him get into the car. And that's not the only case. I just saw a video on my brother's pages today where the video was of a white dude telling this police officer, I'm not getting down from this car. Officer grabs his hand. Officer draws the gun initially and then puts the gun back in the holster to reason with him. So in my mind, it's possible to de-escalate. We've seen police officers go near someone with a gun and say, sir, just be calm. I understand you've had a bad day. They negotiate. But when it comes to some of the cases we're seeing with our black people, there's no negotiation going on. It's just yelling command and waiting for the first opportunity to punish you for not obeying that command, and then coming out and saying, oh, you should have complied. That's why that's the disparity we're talking about. Other people who are not, white people, many white people who are getting arrested, they don't have to remove their dignity. They stand up for their rights. They ask the police officer, why am I being pulled over? Officer, why am I being pulled over? Officer, yeah, do you realize how fast you were going? Yeah, I realize how fast I was going. Are you going to give me a ticket? They're so bold. But when it comes to black people, ooh, put your hands on the steering wheel. Say yes, sir, no, sir. 3 bags full, sir. Whatever they ask you, just be nice to the officer. Let the officer feel good. Make the officer feel great. That's how we talk. That's how we're supposed to act with police officers. But everybody else can pop off. So we need to change that narrative. All I'm advocating is that we spend more time on the system. Even while we advise each other to be careful in the stops and we build our mechanism, let's understand that it's not fair and it's not right that we have to act a certain way just because we are black when we get pulled over. It's not right. And let us never bury that fact under the mountain of compliance. That's all I'm saying. We can comply, but don't make it look as though us becoming slaves to the police officer is a normal thing and it's a right thing. Because that's not the normal relationship we should have with the police officer. They're public servants. We're members of the public. Everybody's innocent until we're proven guilty in a court of law or if you plead guilty. So we should not be treated as though we've been found guilty. And even if we're found guilty and there's a penalty for that guilt that involves incarceration or probation or restitution or anything else or community service, don't punish me for that guilt by shooting me. Even if execution was on the list of consequences from my criminal activity, you don't get to do it. The state gets to prosecute me. The jury gets to convict me. The judge gets to sentence me. Department of Corrections gets to take me in. That's how it's supposed to work. You don't kill me on the spot because of possibility that I might be a criminal. Especially when you don't do that to other races. We need to stop. Let our voices be heard against the corruption and the unfair treatment, even as we have conversations about staying safe. But our conversations about staying safe should not become so prominent as to overshadow the issue. Police brutality, systemic racism, of which there can be no more argument. That stuff exists. That stuff is happening to us. It's your boy JFK, man. I appreciate you guys. Sister Shadi in the building. Thanks for taking time up there, showing up there, Taylor Babalala showing up. I appreciate you guys, man. It's like we're gonna keep talking about these things and hopefully we get some change. All right, it's your boy JFK. Holler at me, share this video, like it, give me a comment afterwards. I read my comments afterwards. Once again, to a lot of my fans and people who follow me regularly, I know it's my fault that all these time changes, no flyers. I know how it's affecting your ability to watch. And plus we're opening up. I started this thing while the quarantine was happening, we're locked down, everybody was at home. So you guys had no choice but to listen to your boy. So everybody's opening up, and that's why my schedule too has changed. So I get that, but we're gonna keep doing it, man, because we got topics to talk about, we got videos we're putting out, and a lot of people actually watch these videos later, which is very encouraging. I got a lot of comments after, a lot of views after, and I'm thinking when I put out one of these videos, like, I'm done for this one, next one. So I appreciate you guys, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for supporting the brother and being part of this. It's your boy JFK. We're gonna talk hopefully on better things soon, lighter topics. I've not really had a chance to delve into Derek Chauvin and the trial right now. There's a lot going on. But we'll hold on. We'll hold off on some commentary till we get to a really critical part of the case. But we'll break it down a little bit. It's your boy JFK, man. Have a good one.